Hello there, Latin 1. So what we have here is grammar that we need to go over, okay? And so you're going to see me reaching for various things. So I'd recommend that you take notes. Were we together, I would be telling you, okay, open up to your grammar and vocabulary notes and take these notes. It's just the very basics. You kind of have to understand your own language to understand learning another language. But the fun thing about Latin is learning the Latin language will absolutely help you to learn the English language better. So this is the one class that will help you in your English class to the point where you'll hardly even need to study. So I want to just kind of go over the basic grammar. Okay, so the basic grammar that we're seeing right now is nouns. Nouns are a person, place, thing, or idea. Verbs. Verbs are the actions or being in a sentence. I will never say action verb, but I know your English classes, you do that. We don't quite do that here, and I'll show you why in a couple chapters. But right now, verbs. They are what move the sentence, okay? Nouns are what sentences are about. Verbs are the mitochondria of the sentence. You don't have a verb, you don't have a sentence. And then adjectives. Adjectives modify, which is another word for describe, but I'm going to keep saying modify. Adjectives modify a noun, okay? You can have more than one adjective modifying a noun, but adjectives always modify nouns. Now, what I didn't put on here are adverbs or conjunctions and all kinds of other things. We'll get there when we get there, but an adverb essentially modifies a verb in the same way that an adjective modifies a noun. But adjectives are so much more useful that I didn't want to spend too much time on them today. Conjunctions are words like and stuff like that, so you still have those. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at nouns. I'm a big fan of patterns, and if you're going to learn a language, finding patterns is really helpful. So, did you notice that all the nouns in the story end in a vowel right now? Now, that won't always be the case, but right now it's a real easy way to find your nouns. So I even put a list up here. Puella, pictura, villa, arbore, Cornelia, estate, villa, Italia, nomine, and there might be others that I came up with or that we find later, but all of these absolutely are nouns. And then they're all ending in vowels, which is kind of an interesting pattern. And it doesn't even matter what the vowel is, although they're all A's and E's, and A's with those little macrons over them. Okay, that line right there is called a macron. It absolutely matters to the grammar in about three or four chapters. Right now, you kind of get away with it, but you want to get into the habit, trust me. But either way, you will notice that all of these words, they're all nouns, and they all end with a vowel. Again, I'm a sucker for patterns. Now let's talk about verbs, okay? Verbs, I don't know if you noticed, but in the story, all your verbs ended with a T right now. Okay? All of them did. Okay, in fairness, eke isn't ending in a T, and it is a verb. But besides eke, which is an odd, quite frankly, archaic version, there's 4 versions of Latin. Eke is like 2 versions before the one we're learning. It was a 1,000-year-old language. It's bound to go through changes. But anyway, eke is technically a verb, but it doesn't end in a T. But all the rest of them totally end in a T. Look at that. Est, habitat, sedet, legit, scribit. Sorry, I only see things backwards. Scribit. All of these end in a T. And they all mean he, she, or it does something. So he, she, or it is, he, she, or it lives, he, she, or it sits, he, she, or it writes, he, she, or it reads. And since this story is talking about 2 Roman girls, it means she does those things. But it just kind of depends on who's doing the verb. Okay? But they do all end in a T, which is kind of interesting. And then that brings us to adjectives. Okay? So nouns and verbs, very simple, very basic. The person doing the sentence and then the verb that they're doing, right? And then adjectives modify nouns, like I said. Did you notice that all of your adjectives right now end in an A? And most of them are either near the noun they modify, or they actually even show up after the noun they modify. Okay, again, I'm reading my own writing backwards. So very often, an adjective comes after its noun in Latin, because the noun's more important. This is true in Spanish as well, gato negro, the black cat. Okay, in English, we do the adjective, then the noun. It's kind of weird. But, so for instance, villa rustica, villa wikina, right? All of those, the adjective comes after the noun it's modifying. And all of them end in an A. And then I gave you one down here as well, because you have a sentence that is on line 5. It says, Laita est flavia. And so I just wrote that down. Est is green because it's a verb, but laita is your adjective, and it's modifying flavia, and it does come first. The rule about Roman word order, or Latin word order, is that it's a lot looser than in English. So if you put noun, then adjective, cool. And if you put adjective, then noun, also cool. It ends up meaning the same thing. But I would point out that all of these adjectives end in an A right now. Okay, so right now, those are the patterns that you can figure out, which is pretty cool. So those are your grammar. What I want you to do is go ahead and do exercise 1B. And what I want you to do is you're going to do 1B. You're going to write down the word. You're going to write number 1 on your paper. You're going to label the assignment 1B. And you write number 1, puella. And next to puella, you're going to tell me what it means. Puella means girl. And then next to the word girl, you're going to tell me what part of speech this is. Puella is a noun. So it's going to look like puella, girl, noun. And I just did number 1 for you, so you get to do numbers 2 through 8. And that's all you have to do. Just write down the Latin, write down the meaning, and then write down the part of speech. And if you get lost on the meaning, go back to the glossary. It's right there. Don't go to the back of the book glossary. Do the chapter glossary. Okay? So there you go. That's what I want you to do after you've kind of taken in all of this grammar. All right? Okay, I'm going to hit the button.